everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order on Tuesday, April 13, 2021, 7 p.m. If you'd all stand at this time for the Pledge of Allegiance and then for 10 seconds of a moment of silence. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You just stand for 10 seconds, please, for all of those who have had COVID and thank you. You may be seated. Deanne, would you take the roll?
Commissioner Hanna,
Here.
Commissioner Hoofnagel,
Yes, I'm
Commissioner Hausberg,
Here.
Vice Mayor McCall,
Here.
Mayor Kennedy.
Here. Thank you, Deanne. Our first agenda item is agenda item number 1, presentations. Both the Pinellas County Sheriff's Department and also the Pinellas Suncoast Fire and Rescue are online tonight. So we will immediately start with 1C, which is a presentation of the comprehensive annual financial report for fiscal year ending September 30th, 2020, and that would be Moore Stephens Loveless. Thank you. Hi.
Hello. Well, thank you. First, I just want to thank the Commission again for allowing us to continue to serve as your external auditors. I'll say this will be kind of repetitive tonight. It was a very clean audit, and the city remains in very good financial condition, so it'll be kind of a similar message over and over. Okay, first, just government auditing standards require us to communicate certain things to governance, so this communication will serve that purpose. First is our responsibility as auditors, and that is to complete an audit under the appropriate standards and also issue opinion on the financial statements. Management responsibility is to set up a set of internal controls to provide reasonable assurance that those financial statements are materially correct. And also, they are responsible. It's management's financial statements, not the auditors. That's always an important piece to remember. That they have to take responsibility for the financial statements. We do test internal controls and compliance. However, it's not enough to render an opinion. It's really just to help us gain an understanding and plan our audit. I'm happy to report. We have no significant difficulties during the audit. No unusual accounting conventions, meaning there was no transaction that really lacked any authoritative guidance or wasn't recorded in the proper period. No disagreements with management, and there was no audit adjustments. And I think that's just an important thing to mention is when you request financial information from the finance department, you're getting reliable information because our audit numbers really didn't change from when we started until when we ended. So I think that's always an important piece to mention. And lastly, we completed the audit schedule in accordance with our planning communication letter that was sent earlier in the year. On to our services and deliverables. First is the independent audit report, and that is the report on the financial statements. That was an unmodified opinion, which that is a clean opinion, the best opinion that you can get. The next report is on internal control and financial reporting and compliance. And again, there was no issues noted with that report, so that's also a clean report. Next is the independent accountants report, which relates to investment compliance with Florida statutes. Again, that was a clean report, no findings noted. And last report is the Auditor General required management letter that also discusses financial condition of the city and other items. And again, that was a clean report, no issues noted. On some really quick financial highlights. Really very consistent from 2020, 2019 for both the governmental activities and the business type activities. And this is really if this is the full accrual, if the city was run like a business, so all long-term liabilities are recorded, all long-term assets. I think really the key number to point out is that unrestricted net position as a percentage of total expenses. Governmental activity is very high at 60%, and that really gives the city the flexibility to meet ongoing expenditures. And then the business type activity is a little bit lower, but still a strong number at 26%. The general fund, being the main operating fund of the city, just comparison to 2020 to 2019, again, very similar, numbers compared to prior year. A $0.1 million change in fund balance compared to 0.4. But again, that important number to point out is your assigned and unassigned fund balance as a percentage of total expenditures. You're almost, have a year of reserves, to meet any unexpected changes. Obviously being a beach community and a hurricane, it's always good to have a strong reserve. So that's, even though it went down slightly, 3% in the year, that's still a very strong number. General fund budget, you pretty much hit exactly your budget. Your revenues came in exactly to the budget, and then your expenditures were $0.1 million under. So really, your spending really matched right up to budget. And at that point, that's really a high level of the financial statements. But overall, again, a very clean audit. Something to be proud of for the city, and the city remains in very strong financial condition. But if there's any questions on the numbers or anything in the reports or anything on the process, I'd be more than happy to answer those questions right now.
Do any of the commissioners have any questions tonight? Ed, do you have any questions? I think you must be muted.
I don't have any questions. I think it looks great, and I wanted to compliment the auditors on a job well done and our financial staff for doing a great job at financial reporting.
Thank you. And to be on exactly to penny is really awesome for the year. I mean, really, that's awesome. If there aren't any other questions, then thank you for coming tonight, and we'll look forward to next year.
All right, thank you.
With that, we're going to go to public comments, which are 3-minute time limits per speaker. Any member of the audience may come forward, give his or her name, address, and state any comment or concern that he or she may have regarding any matter to which the City Commission has control, excluding agenda items. All statements made to the City Commission shall be made to the City Commission as a whole and not directed to an individual City Commission member, and no personal or slanderous remarks shall be permitted. No speaker shall be interrupted, and no debate shall take place between the speaker and the City Commission. So at this time, if there's anyone who would like to come forward, please come forward and state your name and your address. Hi, Linda.
Hello, Mayor. Linda Delina, 1201 Maypond Boulevard. Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. On behalf of the Indian Rocks Historical Museum, we want to thank everyone for the tremendous support of our garage sale fundraiser. Like the saying, it takes a village. We would not have been as successful without the support of the local organizations, A2K, the Beach Arts Center, Greentown Kids, Homeowners Association, and the Rotary, who graciously posted the information on their websites and Facebook pages, and the many people who donated items for the sale. A big thank you to those who stopped by the shop, put money in our donation jars, and find out more about our new exhibit, Shifting Sands. To our museum board and volunteers who spend hours painting signs, sorting items, and working hard to make this a success, a very big thank you. This event not only raised money for our new exhibit, but renewed an awareness of the museum and its importance in the city for the preservation of its history. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. You're doing a great job at the museum. You really are.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to come forward at this time?
Madam Mayor,
Hi.
Commissioners. Trent Wolfersberger, I'm a resident of Hillsborough County and a property owner at 215th Avenue. I just want to thank the Commission for putting the parking decal issue to a work group and for considering changes and amendments to the parking and decal ordinance. I think it's critical that non-resident property owners have
We're
continued
going to
access
be
to
talking
beachfront.
about that, Trent, so you can't, we really don't have you talk about it during public comment if we're going to have it as an agenda item.
Okay.
So I'll have you
My
come back.
apologies, but thank you for your consideration.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to come forward tonight? Okay, with that, we will close the public hearing.
Let's circle back.
Matt, is there anyone on Zoom?
Madam Mayor, so far I haven't seen any participants yet.
Thank you. With that, we'll go to the report of the city attorney. Randy, do you have a report tonight?
I do, Madam Mayor, if you'll just give me a minute.
Okay.
First and foremost, thank you all for taking the time to meet with myself and Manager Mims in the intervening weeks since the last meeting so that we could bring you a revised draft of what will be discussed later this evening. I'm always appreciative of this particular community's collaborative efforts as we approach drafting ordinances and resolutions. It's really, it's great to have differing opinions, disagreeing respectfully, and reaching new work product. It's a pleasure to work here. That said, we are in the midst of legislative session. To that end, I want to speak to a number of bills just so that you're aware of what's going on in Tallahassee at the moment. One of the bills that's appeared more recently through a strike-all amendment, as best I could tell in its legislative history, is House Bill 883. It seeks to overhaul code enforcement by preventing code inspectors from initiating enforcement based on anonymous complaints unless the complainant states that he or she has a substantial fear of retaliation or status-based legal jeopardy, and creates penalties for false claims of those things. This is the reason I raise this in this community. I know it's been advised in the past, especially as it relates to short-term rentals and disputes between neighbors, not to attempt to intervene or resolve them yourself, but to involve PCSO where appropriate or code enforcement where appropriate. So I am monitoring this. This bill already passed the Senate. Its House corollary is currently before the State Affairs Committee agenda. And so we'll see, it's the subcommittee it's before at the moment. It has not reached the House floor. We'll see where that goes. One thing that I don't fully comprehend in its language is it says the county is capable of recovering costs associated with false reports. I didn't see a corollary for local jurisdictions. On that, so continue to monitor and see if that gets amended. The short-term rental bills that were submitted this term, the Senate bill is on the Rules Committee for tomorrow at 9 a.m. That's Senate Bill 522. The bill in its original form had much broader preemption. It has since been amended. In its broadest form, it would have altogether removed municipal regulation, turned everything over to DBPR, the Division of Business and Professional Regulation. That's been walked back a bit. I'm not going to get into a great bit of detail because the House bill, and in order for any bill to pass the legislature, it has to pass both chambers in identical form. The House Bill 219 stalled as of March 18th and has not seen any record activity. It looks like this may likely be another session where, though there is definitely a movement within the legislature to move in this direction, we're not seeing any real political will, especially given some of the public statements the governor has made in the last 2 years on that. There's another bill, Senate Bill 284, which is in its final committee in the Senate, but it's been there since March 24th. In House Bill 55, its identical corollary in the House is temporarily postponed. Temporary postponement is sort of a weird thing because in some ways it can signal a death knell for the bill, especially this late in session. But sometimes we're just waiting to see the other chamber move and then everything happens all at once. It would prohibit local governments from adopting land development regulations that require specific building design elements to single and two-family dwellings unless certain conditions are met, and provides that local governments may adopt LDRs or land development regulations requiring certain building design elements when they do a series of things. Not to go into great detail about that because again it seems to be stalled at the moment, but to make you aware of the various kinds of preemption we're seeing in Tallahassee. Another one is House Bill 403 and its corollary Senate Bill 266. This is one that your town manager has really carried the water for your community on, both with your local legislators and otherwise, the home-based businesses.
It's in its final committee in the Senate, the Rules Committee, and is on the agenda for tomorrow at 9 a.m. The House bill is temporarily postponed on the House floor as of March 31st. So the fact that it's not stalled in a committee, it's temporarily postponed on the House floor. A lot can happen, especially towards the end of session. I would not say that that is done, but it should be noted that it is temporarily postponed. What it does is it preempts areas of regulation for home-based businesses to the state and forbids municipalities from prohibiting, restricting, regulating, or licensing a home-based business in a manner different from other business in a local government's jurisdiction. It's very interesting and telling because the analysis of the bill makes it very clear that communities, by operation of law, communities ordinarily regulate businesses different than residences and keep them in different zoning districts. However, they do not believe that the various regulations from community to community provide predictability within the marketplace, among other issues. But that said, the legislature, if this is ultimately adopted and passed, would fully preempt the field in this way and render any municipal or county regulations on home-based businesses as that term is defined, and render anything that's on the books null and void. There's restrictions within the bill that in order to be a viable home business, it cannot require any modification to the structure of the residence to operate it. So installation of a drive-through window perhaps, or something like that. It can't require, you still have to comply with parking requirements and other similar administrative local rules. But if this passes, it would not only say going forward you can't do X, Y, Z, but anything you have on this goes out the door. As I said, your manager has been very vocal with your local representatives about this issue and writing to and speaking to them on this. There's another bill on impact fees. This is more of an unfunded mandate in some of the ways of reporting and also limiting what impact fees can be used for. This is of some consequence in this community, not great because there's not a lot of impact fee development to my knowledge, and the manager can correct me if I've misstated that. But again, another form of change, and that's sponsored by your local representative, Representative DeSigley. On occasions in the past few years, I've talked to you about the Byrd-Harris Act. That's a piece of legislation that provides civil recovery for something less than a taking. And it has only been amended 3 times substantively since adopted in 1995. There's currently a bill going that it's passed both the Senate and House in their second committees, and changing the procedures and remedies available to landowners whose property is inordinately burdened. Continue to monitor that, and we'll report to you if that substantively changes. And the final one that I think would be of interest to this community is there is a pedestrian safety bill that would swap, ultimately, over its life, if adopted, would swap out the yellow lights to red. Now those flashing yellow beacons, it would say that by 2022, there would seek, presently at the federal government level, the regulation is that they have to be flashing yellow. What this would seek to do is go to DC and say, we'd like the permission to make them red only. No flashing yellow, but red only. The genesis of this was a juvenile who was hit and killed as a pedestrian in one of these crosswalks, and the representative who's bringing that forward. In the shorter term, before the 2022 side, it would require a traffic engineering study to be conducted, which recommends installation of a specified pedestrian crosswalk before the installation occurs. Require a pedestrian crosswalk on a public highway, street, or road which is located at any point other than an intersection with another public highway, street, or road to conform to specified requirements. Provide coordination requirements for those devices and signals, provided they would have to be facing both the pedestrian and the drivers. And so those are some of those changes. But suffice to say, a lot going on, and that's not the entire scope of bills on preemption, but some of the ones I thought that might more directly affect or interest this particular community. Otherwise, continue to work with your manager and staff on a number of matters as we move through the transition to what may likely be the next phase of this pandemic. As you know, in a lot of communities, while business needed doing some things that were less urgent, were not advanced quite as aggressively, and so revisiting some of those things that we told you roughly in February and March of last year we intended to bring forward and had to put on the back burner. So that's where things stand, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Does anyone have any questions for Randy about the legislative or anything else? No. Ed, do you have any questions for Randy?
No, I do not.
Thank you. With that, we'll move on to the city manager's report.
Yeah, good evening. I've submitted a written report. I just want to run through these quickly and give you a couple of other updates. Kind of piggybacking on what Randy was covering. And I mentioned this to the commission probably a year and a half ago, is that the legislature passed a law that was signed by the governor, and unfortunately it was voted yay by all our local legislators. And it has to do with trees. The city has a tree ordinance that's really piggybacked on county ordinance. And unfortunately, what this did was, if you're in the mode of taking down a tree on your property, if you can secure a letter from a landscape architect or arborist that supports the general theme of safety, either to your property or to an individual, they can bypass the city and take trees down. And we've already begun to see that happen. That's why I mentioned it a year and a half ago, just to give y'all a heads up that that's coming. So they, once again, the legislature is struck. I've recently approved the purchase order for the installation of 51 LED street lights in the business district. Those are the decorative lights that we have in the district, and all those will be replaced with LEDs. Much crisper light, requires less maintenance and more energy efficient. And that's all in keeping we've worked together on energy efficiencies, from solar panels to solar beach lights to LED lights in City Hall. It's a continuing effort by the city to be more energy efficient. The Gulf Boulevard undergrounding project, we have one line left now on the poles, one last utility company. They still tell us that they'll be through with that project by the end of the month. I'm working with staff to develop an RFP for the Gulf Boulevard undergrounding phase 2. That would be basically just north of the Pocket Park, going as far north as we can go with the money that the county's allocated. Should be released to the public within 30 days, and then ultimately that will come to the commission, and y'all will approve the winning engineering firm. Randy and I worked together on a special magistrate RFP, just for the public's benefit. A special magistrate is basically like an in-house judge that the commission would hire that would hear really unique or complex code enforcement cases. Fortunately for our city, we don't have that many. I have 2 right now that I'm dealing with. So that RFP is out on the street. The city attorney and I will review the responses back from law firms, and then we'll make a recommendation back to the commission at the June meeting. The city received notice that we'll receive $1.8 million as a part of the American Rescue Plan. I've tasked Dan Carpenter with figuring out the details of that. We're still waiting on the U.S. Treasury Department, along with every other city in the country, to get the final guidance about what those funds can and can't be used for. And then at a future point, we'll have a work session with the commission on how the commission wants to allocate that money. All the capital improvements at the Capelong Little League field across the street are finished. This year's enhancement included new LED lights and bleachers. And after the meeting tonight, if you have a couple minutes, we're going to walk over and hit a switch so you can see if you've not seen it. The finance director and I have begun the process of developing the 21-22 draft budget. The budget calendar actually is on the consent agenda, and you'll see more activity with that. And one last thing, there's a lot of givers and takers in life. Unfortunately, in our city, we have a family-run business that gives. And about 6 weeks ago, I had a call from Matt Louder Jr., and he wanted me to come down and meet with him and his dad. And I did that. I took Dean with me, met with him. And make a real long story short, I sent the commission an email, but just want to address this publicly. They wanted to do something annually, in addition to all the other things they do. The Oktoberfest, Beach Fest, anything that involves the serving of alcohol, which is one of the things that the volunteer groups really generate a lot of revenue from. Everybody knows what that family does just for that. But they're always calling me asking, can we donate food for this? Or you got to have an employee function come up. So anyway, they contacted me about 6 weeks ago. We went down and had a Diet Coke with them. And make a long story short, they have already donated to the city for this year $25,000. And they're going to be the complete sole sponsor of Hollowfest, which is the fall kids event. You know, we've not had that for 2 years.
Right.
2 years ago, it rained us out, and then last year COVID knocked us out. But they want to pick that up, and then the other amount will be allocated, to an enhancement project, and we're trying to figure out what that is. And it most likely will be some type of art project in town. But the great thing about them is that, like I said, there's givers or takers, and these are givers. And that's not the end of it. That's $25,000, and we shook hands and we walked out. Matt, I call Matt Senior, looked at me and said, anything else y'all need, call me. So I just want to publicly recognize Krabby's and what they continue to do for the city. And that's all I have, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
That's wonderful. That was so wonderful that they did that. Does anyone have any questions for the city manager at this time? Ed, do you have any questions for the city manager?
No, I do not.
Okay, thank you. With that, we'll start with Vice Mayor McCall. Do you have a report tonight?
Not necessarily a report, but I just, one thing I would like to note, just to make clear, I was a huge proponent of golf carts. Just something I would like to notate for the sheriff, if he was going to be here. Just over the last month, I've seen 3 to 4 golf carts, not low-speed vehicles, but the unlicensed golf carts. Plus another business owner sent me an email concerned about the safety of driving up and down Gulf Boulevard north to south. They're either sidewalk or in the bike lane. Obviously during tourist season, it gets a little hectic out there. I know the sheriff's kind of in a, got to be in the right place at the right time. But if they just can kind of keep an idea on that, or an eye, basically. And one thing I wanted to kind of ask the city, I don't know if they were vacationers or, they appear to be, but I didn't know if it's something we could send either legally or have the gumption to let maybe the short-term rental folks know of our ordinance between the low-speed vehicle, if they are providing a low-speed vehicle with their short-term rental. Maybe just a short list of our rules so they can either hand them to their tenants each go-round. I know I have a couple on my street that have, either low-speed vehicle or golf cart provided. And I don't know the people that are coming in week to week have an idea or any thoughts on what they can and can't do with that cart. So just a thought to that. I know we're pretty restricted when it comes to short-term rentals, but just an idea to maybe kind of keep those folks off the street.
When you saw the golf carts, did you call or you just made a note of it?
No, I was driving myself.
Oh,
I try to stay off the phone.
Commissioner Hofnagel, do you have a report?
No, I don't. I would like to just express gratitude to the Loader family as well, and also to the city manager and city attorney for the work that they did this week. We had some pretty in-depth discussions. I wanted to thank them for their help.
Thank you, Ed. Commissioner
I
Dennis?
don't have a report this evening.
Okay. No report.
So I wanted you all to meet Luna, my new best friend. Luna is 6 years old, and I got her at the animal shelter about the last week in January. And I went there for a totally different reason. I'm not a dog person at all. I'm a cat person. And I was going with a friend who wanted to do a fundraiser that I grew up with since 3rd grade. And she had lost her son tragically last year, and he was a big animal person. So when we were walking out, I had said to her when we were getting out of the car, I said, you know, I didn't think about adopting a dog. And of course, since she's known me since 3rd grade, she was like, you don't want a dog. What are you talking about? And I said, I know, I would think about it. And what I didn't tell her was I was thinking about getting a shepherd, but a puppy. So when we were getting ready to leave, I asked the girl if there was, her name was Jen, and I asked her if there was, you know, a mechanism in place if you ever got, I said, for instance, a German Shepherd puppy, if I could possibly adopt her. And she said, I have the sweetest 6-year-old right now. And I said, could we see her? So one thing led to another. And she was a stray. And they found her running. And she wasn't chipped. But for some crazy reason, she knows a ton of commands. And 2 weeks after this happened, my 97-year-old mother got very ill and passed away a few weeks later. So I have to tell you that, I don't know, I think there's somebody out there that does things like this because she basically saved me from myself. That I had to get up every morning, and my mother, who is not a dog person either, fell in love with her. And when she met her, the only time she got to meet her, she started talking to her in Italian and just absolutely loved her. So I just, you know, I can't say enough about the animal shelter, and I just wanted all of you to meet her. So if you ever see, she's the sweetest thing in the whole world, and she just really, she's my new girl, and she really saved me. So I brought her in tonight so everybody could meet her. So I just wanted to, this is Lady Luna Kennedy. She's very pretty. All right, come on, everybody. Good girl. My son doesn't mind this well. Just saying. Okay, from this, we're going to move on to agenda item number 4, which is additions and deletions. Are there any tonight? Hearing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. And is there a motion for consent agenda?
Madam Mayor, may I read the items on the consent
You
agenda?
may read it.
Thank you. There are several items on the consent agenda. Item A, approval of March 9, 2021 investiture ceremony minutes. Item B, approval of the March 9, 2021 regular city commission meeting minutes. Item C, approval of the fiscal year 2021-2022 budget calendar. Item D, resolution number 2021-05, a resolution adopting Pinellas County's Community Rating System Multi-Jurisdictional Program for Public Information, PPI. Item E, receive/file the annual updates to the Pinellas County's Community Rating System Program for Public Information, PPI. Item F, receive/file the annual updates to the Pinellas County's Local Mitigation Strategy, LMS. Item G, accept/file the comprehensive annual financial report for fiscal year ended September 30, 2020. Item H, authorizing the city manager to execute a property lease with the city of Largo for the IRB solid waste operations. Item I, receive/file the Indian Rocks Beach annual progress report on flood mitigation projects in Pinellas County's local mitigation strategy. Item J, proclamation proclaiming May 16th to the 22nd, 2021 as National Public Works Week -- Stronger Together. Items A through J on the consent agenda, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Randy. At this time, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, and is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Denise and second by Vice Mayor McCall. With that, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, with that, we're going to move to 6A, public hearing BOA case number 2021-03, 1203 Bay Palm Boulevard. Randy, would you read this agenda item?
Happily, Madam Mayor. Item 6A, BOA case number 2021-03 for 1203 Bay Palm Boulevard. Considering variance requests from section 110-344 sub 4 to allow variances of 5 feet into the 10-foot rear yard setback and 2 feet 6 inches into the 7-foot 6-inch side yard setback to allow for the installation of a swimming pool for the property location at 1203 Bay Palm Boulevard, Indian Rocks Beach, Florida, and legally described as Lot 7, Block 84, First Edition, a re-revised map of Indian Rocks Beach subdivision, parcel number 013014420480840070. This is a quasi-judicial hearing, Madam Mayor and Commissioners. This is in a quasi-judicial setting. You are not making the law, but rather applying the law, applying the facts to establish law and criteria within your code. Before we begin, I must first ask if any members of this commission have had any ex parte communications with the applicant in advance of this meeting.
No.
No.
Let the record reflect all have responded in the negative. Apart from incidentally driving by a property in your community, have any of you visited the site of this property for the purpose of evaluating the application before you this evening?
No.
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 Let the record reflect all have responded in the negative. With that, will anybody who intends to offer any testimony on this application please stand and raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you are going to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. The representatives have been sworn. At this point, I'll turn it over to the city manager.
Thanks, Randy. This is a request by John P. Clausen for a variance for side and rear yard setbacks for the installation of a swimming pool. They're requesting the pool encroach 5 feet into a 10-foot rear yard setback, which would leave a 5-foot rear yard setback, and 2 foot 6 inches into the 7 foot 6 inch south setback, leaving a 5-foot setback. The staff recommended this variance. The Board of Adjustment, which is the previewer of all variances, they heard the case and they recommended it unanimously. There's photographs, images in your packet. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Does any of the commission have a question for the city manager at this time concerning?
Now, I'm sorry, one other thing I'd like to put in the record is that it's noted in the staff report, but it's important to note that all 3 of the voting property owners all signed letters in support of the
I saw that.
variance.
Anyone would like to ask a question? Ed, are you okay?
I don't have any questions.
Okay, thank you. With that, I'm going to open the public comment. Is there anyone who would like to come forward at this time?
Well,
The applicant?
The applicant, yeah.
Yes.
Good afternoon. My name's Butch Brown. I'm actually the owner of Modern Pools. I'm here to just give you guys some information. I'm also a neighbor and a resident of Indian Rocks Beach since I moved here in 1985. I also am a local business owner here, just to inform you of that. I own Mel's Beach Gym with my girlfriend Melanie LeBlanc. With information regarding this, this backyard is such a pie-shaped, small backyard that the only way that this homeowner is able to actually put the pool in is for us to get this variance of the 5 feet on the rear and the 2.5 feet on the side. If you do look at the pictures, this is a unique property where when the builder built the house, that house and the house next to it, they actually have up a 6-foot concrete wall that goes all the way around the property. So with that being said, we did get permission from the adjacent properties. The rear, the side, and the other side, all of them signed off saying that they blessed it. The property that is directly south actually has a pool that also is outside of the code. It actually is 3 feet from the rear and 5 feet from the side. So it kind of fits into the molding of what we're trying to do in the community. So, any questions?
Butch. Does anyone have any questions for Butch at this time concerning the pool? No. Okay, with that, I'm going to have you just hang there and we'll go out to public comment and see if anyone has any comments. Is there anyone at this time who would like to make a comment on this variance? Hearing none, I'm going to close the public comment. I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to say, Butch, you're good? Okay. At this time, is there anyone on the commission who would like to say anything or would like to enter into a motion?
I motion to approve BOA case 2020, or number 2020-103 for 1203 Maple Boulevard.
I'll second the motion.
Second. Is there any comments on the motion from the maker?
I did view this just from a aerial standpoint, obviously, just as Butch alluded, as a pie-shaped lot.
Yeah.
It seems to be what, is driving the force on this.
Denise, do you have anything?
No,
Shh. My dog has a comment. Ed, anything, because I can't tell if you have
No,
anything?
I agree that the hardship is created by the nature of the geometry of the lot.
Okay. With that, Denise, anybody else? Ed, Phil? Denise, Deanne, you call the roll.
Commissioner Hanna,
Yes.
Commissioner Hoopnagel,
Yes.
Commissioner Houseburg,
yes.
Vice Mayor McCall,
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you. All right. Let's move on now to other legislative matters, which we have none. Our work session discussion items, our agenda item number 8, and we will go to 8A, which is discussion of pickleball. With that, what I decided is that we will go right to the public comment. We're going to open it up to the public comment and give the public a chance to come forward on this agenda item. And with that, whoever would like to come forward first may come forward.
Excuse me, Mayor, I think Dr. Maggie has information to hand out to the
Okay.
commission.
That's fine.
Just want to make it easy on the commissioner.
No problem,
We are
Maggie.
discussing.
You weren't there on take one and pass it down day?
I never learned to share.
Hello, Maria.
Good evening, everyone. First, I would like to welcome our new commissioner, Dennis Osprey.
Thank you.
Mayor, commissioner, city manager, city attorney.
Excuse me, you're going to state your name.
Name and your address.
Maria Hishmati, 315 La Hacienda Drive. As we all know, we have always welcomed all the players at our pickleball courts. However, unfortunately, there has been several altercations happen at the courts where the non-residents disrespected the residents. Also, the non-residents player disrespected one of our best city employees, whom we all love and know, and he has also worked with A2K in many projects, and he is a very kind man. I have been personally present at the courts and have witnessed all these issues, which are unacceptable. What else does need to happen at the courts in order for the city to solve these issues that we are facing? This is our home, our beautiful town, which we love, and living peacefully and respectfully. We are all neighbors and we care for each other. Some of the non-residents don't care about our beautiful town. They just come here, play, be rude, and leave. They simply do not care the way we care. The city website is also indicating that the course at the Cole Park is for the use of residents and homeowners and guests. The Brown Park, however, is open to all. In the past, the residents had to get a key from the city in order to access the courts at the Cole Park. This is a city park and has been a city park back then as well. So I'm wondering what has changed, and if anything has changed, what date and how did it change? and why there has never been a notification about this. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you, Maggie.
Hi, Maggie.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Ms. Mayor, for giving the opportunity and setting up this workshop as a part of your busy schedule. We appreciate that very much, and really appreciate the opportunity to come here
Excuse
to
me,
talk.
you got to state your
I'm
name.
sorry, Magdi Abdul Hamid, 101 Drash Unit 3. I'm sorry for that about that. So thanks for the opportunity to talk to you guys today, because really this has been, Maria identified the issue, and I also passed around the flyer that we met together as a residents of IRB pickleball players, and most of them are here today, and some of them could not make it, but could be on the Zoom call. We met to discuss the issue because we care. That's the main reason, because we care. Because we care about the city, because we want to play, we want to enjoy, and as you all know, this is the fastest growing sports in US. I used to play tennis many years ago, and I had to say it, tennis is dying. Pickleball is picking up. So this is where the future is. Young players are turning to play pickleball more than old players. There was a tournament out there in Tampa not too long ago. It had over 1,000 players, 1,000 players playing in one day. We love to host such a tournament in our area here. That would be great for our future economy if we can do that. 1-2 days tournament, if we have the appropriate courts to do that, of course. Anyway, Maria presented the issue, and the issue really is overcrowding, rudeness, etc. You heard that from her. I'm not going to go over that again. So we met to brainstorm some ideas to share with the city. We want to present our thoughts, our ideas, and ask you to help us find the optimum option that will work for the city and also will please us, the residents. We are the residents. We are the taxpayers. And we really we should have the right to have the first right to these courts before anybody else. So, in the note in front of you, and I'm sorry, Ed, I didn't know you're not going to be here, otherwise I should send you an electronic file. But in the notes in front of you, we laid out several options. The options goes from the simplest in our mind to the hardest. And the simplest is, can we have these courts basically closed to be for residents only, or for residents and some guests we invite? Option 2, if option 1 is not possible for every day, can we have those courts blocked on certain hours of the day, not the whole day? We don't play the whole day. We only want a few hours every day. If number 2 is hard, can we have those courts on few days a week, certain times of the day? Then, can the city help us adding more courts? As I said, there was a tournament out there in Tampa that attracted 1,000 players and brought a lot of money to the city. Can that apply to our little city here once or twice a year if we have the appropriate number of courts? And the option we are offering you, or the option we are rolling out or presenting to you today, I don't think, from my own perspective, I'm not an engineer or an architect, but we already have an existing 2 tennis courts. And as I said, the tennis is dying. If you come out any day during the week, any time during the day, you will see the number of pickleball players to the number of tennis players is almost 10 to 1. Almost 10 to 1, if not 30 to 1, or 30 to 0, because nobody's using the tennis courts. So all we are asking, can we take one of these 2 tennis courts in Copper Park here and convert them into 2 to 3 or 4 pickleball courts? We don't think it's going to cost much because the ground is there. It is tennis courts. All we need to do is just draw some lines and converted them into 3 or 4 pickleball courts going by sidewalk. We also giving you some thoughts about creating or making more money if we can. Can you charge those out-of-towners for the time they play here? This is the play for fee on the notes I passed to you. Can the city, there is a note here too around the parking. Those people come from all over the different towns around us. They use the parking. They park on First, they park on 16th, they park right here across from the City Hall. Can we limit the number of parking? Like, we are trying to throw at you as many ideas as we can. We are trying to help you. And finally, if we, going back to the parking, can we limit the parking to, say, 2 hours a day, or residents only, or even no parking? I know there's another big discussion about parking coming after that, so, well, maybe this could be part of that discussion. Then we also thought about, okay, what's going on with the baseball field? I just driving by around the baseball field now, and I can see a little league there, where I don't think all these players are Indian Rocks players. I don't think so. I also drive around on Thursday, and I see senior league. So what's going on with the baseball field? How this baseball field, is it part of Coke Park? Is it part of the public area, or what exactly? We really want to know more about how these activities are being handled. And the question to the city is, can we form an IRB league ourselves for pickleball and start playing at certain time of the day, at certain day of the week? And finally, in my notes, I brought forward the statement that Maria said about that Coke Park tennis courts are lighted and may be used by residents, property owners, and investors. Of course, residents, property owners are us. Visitors, in my understanding, those people who are visiting the city, vacationing in the city, staying in the city for several days, several weeks, several months, whatever they are. In my mind, those visitors are not the people that drive over Walsingham Bridge to come play here for a couple of hours and go back. Those are not visitors. And Brown Park is open for all, which means that the city is really differentiating between Colt and Brown. Brown for all, Colt for so, so, and so. So, here are some of the thoughts and the ideas, and we are open for the discussion. We are here to have you as partners with us to help us find the optimum solution. So, is it a discussion? Is everybody's going to start speaking up?
Well,
It's public comment, sir. It's your
Right now, there's
opportunity.
public
It's your
comments.
opportunity to speak, and the council is listening.
Sure.
thank
So,
you,
thank you.
Maggie.
You're welcome.
Is there anyone else who would like to come forward at this time concerning pickleball? Okay, hearing none.
Is there anybody on the?
Is there anyone on Zoom? Matt?
No.
Okay, we'll
Madam
close.
Mayor, there's no commentaries on Zoom.
Okay, we'll close the public comment at this time. I'm going to turn it over to Greg.
Thanks, Cookie. I think it's important to go back and talk about history a little bit. In 2017, the city completely recoded, repainted both tennis courts at Cole Park and Brown Park, repainted them, and then added pickleball lines. That was a request by some of the local residents, and we accommodated that, we did that. And it was the right thing to do, because as it indicated, pickleball is, you know, a fast growing sport. In fact, the year that we added the money to build pickleball courts, I had it in my proposed budget. The commission approved it unanimously. And one thing I will tell you, just remind the commission and the public about capital improvement projects. And those were budgeted in 2018, by the way. They were constructed in 2019. The courts were constructed with penny funds, which of penny funds, a third of the money comes from tourists, and the rest comes from residents of Pinellas County, not just residents of Indian Rock Beach, but Pinellas County. When we built those, we demolished the racquetball court that was never used. The only time it was used was two very sweet ladies that would take their poodles in the racquetball court and visit. And then literally the shuffleball court that was there, it was used twice a year because we had the equipment, so you had to come to public services to get it. So when you, every time how often it was used twice a year by the same person. So it made sense to do that. After we built the pickleball courts, based on concerns, complaints that we had from the surrounding property owners, we installed landscaping and sound barriers to accommodate those neighbors, reoriented the LED lights, did all that, and that was about $14,000. The original construction was $50,000, then we did $14,000, and then a year or so ago we had kind of continual requests for more concrete around the pickleball courts, between the pickleball courts and the restroom area, because there's so many people there. It was not a good situation. We did that. It was about $4,400 that we spent doing that. The website, this is something that goes back probably before me. Right about the time I got here is when the lots were cut off the tennis courts, because that was not working, because the fallacy is, well, number one, those are public parks. But the fallacy of only residents had keys, what was happening was residents had keys, and they were making keys and giving keys to other people, and that wasn't working. And tying back into how we got to where we are with pickleball, and the thing that made sense about using the tennis courts for dual purposes was that, let's let people play, because the fact of the matter is the tennis courts were sitting empty most of the time. So that was done. So this reference, this weird thing that's on the website, it'll be off in the morning. I'll take that off. Baseball field, the city for, I don't know how long, Dean's been here for a long time. Dean's been here since the dinosaurs. The city's had a lease with the Little League probably for 30 plus years. The Little League holds a lease with the city for the baseball field. We don't get into scheduling. We don't get into signing kids up. They do it all. They don't discriminate. If you're a kid and you want to play baseball, if you're within the right age, and I think you have to have a physical exam, medical exam, certain days you can play. So they had to lease the field. In the lease, it says in the lease on the baseball field that during the times the Little League is not using the field, that anybody can use it. So that's why on Sundays sometime you'll see little kids out there playing, or during all these spring breaks and people that we've had in town, you'll see families out there that are playing on the baseball field. Right about when I got here, there was a trying to think of the right word to use. There was a feud going on between the IRB Senior Softball League and the Little League about the use of the field. And I'm a pretty straightforward, let's get to the issues and work it out. So I set up a meeting between the Senior Softball League members, and the Little League president, and some of their board members, and we sat down in my office, and basically I just got them to say, look, the lease says that during the times the Little League's not using the field, the public would use it. And then the Senior Softball League had formed, so they wanted a more formal arrangement. And that's worked out very well. Now, every year, the Senior Softball League sits down with the Little League, and they work out schedules. And then anytime we have construction going on, we just have to say, okay, we're closing the field, just like we did for the light. So one of the ideas that was brought up was if the pickleball players could form their own league. I think that was you or the pickleball players could, in fact, organize, put together bylaws. The Senior Softball League is they have their, I think they're.
I totally missed it because they did all this other stuff. They did this.
She missed it. but they could do that and then come forth and, yeah, I wouldn't have any issue working with a group for the pickleball courts. Of course, that's be subject to the commission being comfortable with that. As far as parking, there's plenty of parking here. One of the things that we did was, and one of the things on the list was that I looked at, because I had seen this a couple weeks ago, was the idea of restricting parking right around the pickleball courts to residents only. Y'all already made a decision on that. There was an ordinance that you had before you that was going to restrict and basically state that during certain hours, only people with decals could park on the street. That didn't pass. So that's not an option I have. But one of the things that I did do after that did not pass, we added some additional resident spaces. We added some at Browns Park. We added some right across the street here at Cole Park, and then I added a couple more down at the Nature Preserve. So really, all the parks have resident spaces. So the thing that I think probably is maybe the most viable, this is my suggestion is let the pickleball group look at the possibility of forming a league. Of course, one of my suggestions about that is that it needs to be like the senior softball league and the little league. Is that if they form the league and the commission was okay with that, it needs to be open. I mean, it needs to be inclusive because
So whether you live here or not.
Yeah, softball league. In fact, I think the majority of softball players are not from Indian Rocks Beach, but they make that work. And we all know the demographics of IRB. The majority of the kids now are playing little league or not residents. So that would be my comments about it. I would tell you it's I'm proud to have recommended in the 2018 budget the pickleball courts, but I will tell you to the process of dealing with complaints, harassment of employees. It's not just one employee; it's most of them. In fact, I think I told the commission earlier in a memorandum that I literally have employees that don't want to go to the pickleball courts during times that there's active play going on in pickleball. I'm not trying to offend anybody, and that includes residents and non-residents, by the way. So I think the league thing's a good thing to pursue, and if I can help facilitate that or work with whoever, I'll do that as long as the commission is comfortable with that. So that's probably right now. That's all I have to say about that.
Do any of the commissioners have any thoughts? We can start with Vice Mayor McCall.
I'm pretty much was kind of along the same lines with Greg as far
Mr.
as.
McCall, you have to speak into the mic.
I apologize. Is that better? Is that on? Is this on?
Yeah.
I was looking kind of down that same path as far as league. I thought that was a great suggestion. And the other opportunity I was just looking at was, as you talked about, the city budget or converting some of the tennis courts to give more ample space. From the other information we've gotten, limiting that to residents only obviously may cause a problem. But I was thinking maybe, the nonprofits may get involved with this with either the HOA or A2K from funding of that type of enhancement to those tennis courts if that's a path we want to take.
And one thing I didn't say while we're between commissioners' comments about this is that I'd asked about 2 months ago for Dean to get me a quote from the company that we used when we resurfaced, because whether we left the courts like they are or not, they're getting to the point where the next year or so we need to fill the cracks and recoat them. And we can, if we wanted to convert the 2 tennis courts to Cole Park to pickleball, we can at least get 4 there. We may get more. In fact, my daughter and her family lived in a subdivision in Jacksonville Beach, a private subdivision, And they had their tennis courts up that way, and there's actually portable nets that are on wheels, and you can roll them out, and you can use it for pickleball. So there's a variety of options. Putting all our cards on the table, my only concern about doing that is that, success brings more. Is it the old saying, if you build it, they'll come, and that's my only concern about that, because they're going to have to step on your toes, but the unofficial ambassador of pickleball is the Seminole resident. And that person has been endorsed different times at different meetings by locals to promote pickleball, and that is what has led to some of the visitors that we have that come over and utilize the court. So I've got the numbers to plug in the budget if we want to go that route. Like I said, but I just want to say publicly, that's my only concern about doing that, is that if we convert the 2 tennis courts into 4, possibly 6 pickleball courts, I'm just, wondering how that's going to wind up. But maybe at least the possibility of going down the road and looking at, a local league, whether it is blocked out periods of time, maybe that'll be the offset of that if we have that problem, where there'll be that designated time for league play.
Right. Thank you.
Could be stepped out, so Phil, you got anything?
No, I agree with the league is a possibility. I was concerned about the penny for Pinellas and the fact that the courts and parks and everything belong to everyone, just how we assure we're not going to get sideways with the legal issues, but if the leagues are open for anyone, that would probably solve that. And then obviously rules and regulations, if somebody is going to be acting foolish, they need to be banned from the courts. It's plain and simple. And I don't think we should tolerate that. I don't care where they're from. And that's all I have.
I guess my only concern is that if you set up a league and you schedule a time and then you get there to play with your league players and there's people on the court, like who's going to police that when you're trying to shake people off the court for your league time? And that, is the city going to be responsible for the policing of that effort?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was one of the concerns that I had about one of the suggestions of just say that you went the route where it was set up where there was some priority given to IRB residents, and it said IRB residents and guests. So just imagine that the commission said, that's what we're going to do this for certain hours. And then we roll into work and somebody calls at 8:05, the city hauler comes over and says, there's a group of people that are over at the tennis courts, they're not supposed to be there, because they're not an IRB resident or a guest. I mean, literally I'd send Mike Kelly over and ask for IDs and then try to match up who's with whom. And that's why I think the public is the only way to really look at this, because this is not a practical way to do it. In fact, I never had that discussion with Randy, but Mike Kelly can't force somebody to produce their ID. I think most people are pretty cooperative with us, but there's just a lot of inherent issues with going with that route. Ed?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I have a question first. Has the legal memorandum that we received, has that been provided to the public? Are they aware of the content of that legal memorandum?
It's in the agenda packet.
The legal memorandum referenced was in the agenda packet materials available to the public. Whether the members of the public have had an opportunity to access it or digest it, I don't know. I will, for purposes of the record tonight and those present, speak to that. I did not speak up sooner, just given the nature of the direction of the dialogue. I, at the request of the town manager, and having observed some of the email traffic and feedback at the public meetings over the last several months, did draft a memorandum on the issue. My memorandum focused in 2 parts. The first part being the legal ability of the town to make a distinction between the residents and non-residents for the purpose of access to a public park. And the very simple analysis being such restriction is unconstitutional. The town cannot, or the city rather, cannot employ some restriction or regulation that restricts park access. As desirable as pickleball is and the growing fastest sport, it is not a mystery to anybody in this room that your greatest resource are your public beaches. And no sooner than we could close off the beach or a portion of the beach to residents only, could we do that with the parks. The same analysis holds here. And so, this is not, I know when the lawyer starts talking, the inclination is, ask somebody else, what does that guy know? This is not some esoteric legal principle. Very recently, actually within the last year, the city of Palo Alto, California, was sued by a consortium of advocacy groups and residents or non-residents in connection with a prohibition that had been in place since 1965 for what is known as Foothills Park there. Since 1965, the park was off limits to people who lived outside Palo Alto unless visitors were accompanied by a city resident, not unlike has been discussed tonight. The suit argued that the restriction, quote unquote, traces its roots to an era when racial discrimination in and around the city was open and notorious and violated the non-residents' right to free speech and assembly by preventing them from expressing their opposition to the ordinance in the park and right to gather in the park. And so when they were sued, they promptly entered into a consent judgment, which is to say, they said, we're not going to defend this, we agree, let's figure out terms and move forward. And pretty quickly the city commission approved changing that restriction, and there were several local news articles over there talking about the change and how people expected a flood and didn't see it, and how there was, in the end, it wasn't all that different. But the reality remains that in as much as you're talking about restrictions specific to residency, those restrictions, or non-residency for that matter, those restrictions are unlikely to pass legal muster as it relates to access to a public park, especially a public park paid for by taxpayer funds from beyond this community. Not that that would limit it. It's tempting. You folks have a lovely community here. There's no other way to describe it. You talk about the solidarity of your businesses investing, the folks here tonight. You have a tremendous resource, but you still have a city. It is not a country club. And so that's the challenge that you face. It's not a closed-off facility that way, and it has to be managed as such. That is not to say there are not other administrative remedies. Those have been discussed tonight, whether it be erection of additional courts, formation of a league, but even as you talk about leagues, the gentleman who spoke earlier even referenced there's softball leagues, but those aren't people who are not necessarily limited to Indian Rocks Beach, and the same with the Little League. And so the non-residency element of that. As it relates to some of the other discussion, this was not addressed in the memo. The greater social consequence of erosion of civility is a whole nother philosophical point I could address, but what I will say is, whether it be fortunately or unfortunately, it is not against the law to be a jerk. It's just not. Those deputies who serve and sit in the back of the room will tell you they're called a lot of times just to be the grown-up in a situation between two adults, trying to figure out how to just be civil and work their disagreements out. But it's not against the law, and we can't ban or trespass people permanently or otherwise based on a lack of respect or foul language, things like that on isolated instances. It's certainly tempting in instances, but we have to be mindful of that. And so, that said, there is a second half of my memo that addresses alternative administrative remedies, and it did have a cautionary tone advising, one, that the same mindfulness of this being a public forum and the constitutional analysis would still apply to those, and that if the city desired to move in that direction, it needs to recognize the resource allocation and prioritization that may require in working with the administration. Obviously, you've heard the comments tonight from the administration, who's willing to talk through solutions. I just want to reiterate when we talk about leagues that the way your city operates, this city does not operate a Parks and Rec program where it administers sports leagues for juveniles or otherwise. And so the leagues that have been referenced operate independent of the city with access to city resources. And so inasmuch as the management has expressed a willingness to work with access to resources, it was not to formulate and fully administer such a league. And so that's what the memorandum speaks to. There are solutions, but at the legal framework being, or the fetter on this entire process being, this dialogue can't revolve around residents versus non-residents. It needs to be more just about managing a scarce resource.
Thank you, Rand. Thank you, I appreciate that. And so I want to keep the floor for a moment, Kobe, sorry.
No problem.
In the event that there was a league created, and in the event that that league was deemed to be restricting access to the league based on residency requirements, the board of directors of that league would be liable in a lawsuit situation for any exclusionary behavior which violates the right of access, First Amendment, and all that stuff, which is an important part of our the way that we behave as citizens. So bear that in mind. I'm kind of speaking to the audience who was there and presenting different ideas about wouldn't it be great if we had a league. It comes with a lot of strings attached. I have a second question, usually for the city manager. I know that some of the tennis courts are painted. Do those get used for pickleball? I mean, because I've heard that people don't want to use the tennis courts because if the ball gets missed, it's too far to go run and chase after the ball, and it's more convenient to play in the enclosed pickleball court. So my question is, since we painted the tennis courts, are those used for pickleball, or do they sit vacant while people fight over the good court?
No, they're used. I mean, the preference by pickleball players is to use the new courts, and I get it. I mean, they're the appropriate size pickleball courts. You will see on occasion, it doesn't happen very often, you'll see on occasion where there are people playing pickleball and there'll be people waiting in chairs and wait to get on the pickleball courts, but they are used. Back in December, January, and the 1st of March, I had Mike Kelly go by Cole Park and Brown Park every day at 8 o'clock, 10 o'clock, and 2 o'clock to do like a head count. And by far, all the courts are used, but by far Brown Park is completely underutilized. To give you an example, on December the 9th, 2020 at 8 o'clock, there were 20 people in Cole Park. At 10 o'clock, there were 24 people in Cole Park, either on the pickleball courts or playing on the tennis courts, or a combination of both, or neither. And at 2 o'clock, there were 6, and at the same time at Brown Park, at 8 o'clock, there were 6, at 10 o'clock, there were 6, and at 2 o'clock, there were 0. And I'll provide this to the commission later, but it clearly shows that the preference is Cole Park, and the definite preference is the pickleball courts themselves. But they are all used, but some used more than others.
So thank you, Greg. I appreciate that. And that's kind of like what I had suspected. But given the legal framework that the attorney put out, personally, I'm of the mind that probably the most appropriate solution is going to be something that increases the number of pickleball access points. In other words, more courts. I understand, Greg, what you were saying about if you build it, they will come. In terms of parks and recreation and meeting the lifestyle and exercise needs of our citizens, I feel like that might be the best way to help serve our constituents better. I don't feel personally that access restriction is going to be legal or preferable. Anyway, I'm going to cede the floor. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. And Phil, do you have any comments? Have you?
No, I didn't.
You did. Is everyone spoken? So we started, I guess it was, 8 or 10 months ago, and when some of these issues came up, and I did go to the city of Largo. I spoke to several of the commissioners, the vice mayor. I talked to the Recs department about some of the issues that we were having here, and theirs are being underutilized for They cost money, ours don't. Some of theirs are inside, some are outside, they like it here better. I think they like playing with all of us. So, you know, I mean, it is what it is. I understand Seminole is very similar, but I had a lot of discussions with Largo about it. I thought we could make some headway, but the head of the recreation department there was not interested in doing anything to add more courts. She did not feel that in the big realm of things, there were other recreational activities that were more important. And I'm just, that was Largo. So then MAGD invited me to come to a meeting, and there was probably 20 people there that played pickleball courts. In fact, some residents that they own homes, but they go back and forth, and they're not exactly they're not voters or anything like that, but they live here half the year, and who have come to enjoy playing pickleball too. So we went over, and I believe there was about 17 items, and I made a comment after I wrote everything down that everyone talked about, that, you know, my experience going back many, many years from my mentor Bob DiNicola was, because I had lists like that when I first became a commissioner, was he looked at me and said, that list has 65 things on it, you better hope you get 2. And so you did condense the list, and then I went in and had 2 meetings with Randy, our city attorney, and Greg, and the legality of the situation, the fact that we use penny for Pinellas money to build the court, all of these play a part in why it cannot be just for Indian Rocks Beach residents. One of the things that we talked about was the parking. And I did speak to Greg about it earlier today, and whether there could be some restriction. And there is a restriction that 2 of the parking spaces are for Indian Rocks Beach residents. And my thought was, you know, maybe we could, because one of the things that Maggie had said to me was, you know, people love it so much that they're coming from out of the area and they're staying 3 and 4 hours at a time to play. So, you know, there could be a discussion maybe about the parking of, you know, maybe more of them, more where the art center is, that small area there, perhaps to say more that those were for Indian Rocks Beach residents. We decided that limiting was probably not a good idea. So where do we go from here? What is the will of the commission after all the comments that were made by those that were speaking and also from the commission? This is a discussion item. Greg has mentioned to be a part of he would more than be happy to sit down with some kind of a league situation. Ed has mentioned that there could be legalities from that. But maybe we can work through those. So, how would you like to proceed with this? Ray?
You're looking at me?
Yes, sir. You're my guy.
Well, I think for my purposes, because we are beginning the budget cycle, I'd like to maybe just get feedback if you're in a position to do it, about your thoughts individually about converting either one or both of those tennis courts across the street to accommodate pickleball. And I know we use a tennis court company, but they're obviously in the business, so they do this all the time. I know we can get 4 over there, four additional, maybe more than that, but we'd have to go back and get them to draw it up. But I'm specifically, I'd be interested in the commission, as we work on the budget, is that knowing what may come with that, is that something that y'all are interested in? If it is, I'll try to incorporate that in the budget. So I'm interested if you like that or you don't like that, or what do you think?
Why don't we just poll all of us? Phil, would you be okay, or?
Yeah, I think so. I think as long as you already know what the potential problems would be. So how are you going to fund staff to take care of that? And I think with having rules that need to be posted, maybe also, I don't play pickleball, so I don't know. But how long does it take to play a game typically? How much time is enough time? Is there something as far as the regulation of time on the court that to get speed play up for everybody? But I think it's a viable thing. I'm glad to hear we'll leave at least one of the parks open for tennis, because there are still people that play tennis, maybe not as much, but I think if you shut all the tennis courts down, you're going to have some hassle.
Just to make it clear, what I would propose is that we would resurface the 2 tennis courts over here,
Mm-hmm.
strike everything back that would accommodate tennis and pickleball, and these are nice nets, I'm not talking about cheap things, portable pickleball nets that can be rolled out and used
Right.
during the time that tennis was not going on. Because there has been, during the period of time that we converted more into pickleball, there have been complaints from tennis players about, because that's the only lighting courts that we have, so light can't get in there. So it would be a grade A class pickleball court with nice portable nets can be rolled in place and rolled out. But these would not be fixed nets.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great solution, is create more opportunities for people to come play.
Vice Mayor McCall, do you have any thoughts?
Those are really the 2 options I saw. Like I say, if we give more access, then really, but as Ed alluded to, we're all part of different associations here. Like you said, if you want to take on that path of building a league, like Ed alluded to, there's obviously legal components to that should be considered from the league formation and the city and how it interacts would be my only concern. Any restrictions there?
And do you have any other comments before I finish this agenda item?
Yeah, question for you, Cookie. You said Largo charges for their pickleball courts?
Yes, they do. They do.
Oh.
They have, you become a member of the Highland Recreation Complex, and you pay through that.
And that's for indoor as well as outdoor courts?
Yes, to the best of my knowledge, it is.
And that's not one of the options we discussed.
No,
I did talk to Greg about it, but because we don't have a recreation department here,
yeah, well, if you look at the larger cities, typically when you go to a rec center and you check in and you play basketball or you handball or tennis, whatever, and then you go through the building and you go out on the courts, we're not set up that way. So, I would not recommend the commissions consider like annual memberships or any of that, because we don't have staff. One thing, if I can, Cookie, that I want to address something that Phil had mentioned, is that in the city code, there's a general code of conduct for parks. And to address your question about earlier, the suggested guideline that we have up on signs at tennis courts and over pickleball is that out of courtesy, we try to ask people to limit plays an hour. But if you've got 30 pickleball people lined up, they can have it up. But as far as people's behavior, there have been occasions, and there haven't been many in the last couple of years, but situations for like the skate park, for example, where people have climbed the fence, jumped in. I would go over, I'd send somebody over, and they would politely tell us to go do something to ourselves. And then I would call the deputy, and we'd trespass them where they don't get to come by. We had teenagers one time that actually lit off an explosive in the skate park. And they got trespassed and cuffed. And so other than general things, staff was not going to babysit people in park facilities. I've been here almost 8 years. I've never been called to the Little League field to resolve a difference with. But if it rose to the level where there was going to be like a physical altercation or somebody's just, cursing extremely, that would probably rise to the level where we get involved. But just routine disagreements. If you want to see disagreements, go watch your senior softball league and see how that is sometimes. Other than that threshold, we're not going to get involved in, regulating. We're talking about adults.
Exactly.
So that, so anyway, I just want to make sure we understood that. 'Cause it won't, this won't involve any additional staff. It'll be, if we have that severe of a problem, we'll deal with it. And I can trust people about it too, but very rarely is that going to happen.
So, Greg, to kind of fill this in now, we will put into the budget.
Well, I wouldn't go that far.
We'll consider it.
Well, I gotta do, well, I know when I put in the money for the original course, just remember that. But no, what I'm telling you is that I don't see any issue with it. I just gotta go get the numbers. When you get a draft budget, based on what the consensus of what y'all indicated tonight, you'll most likely will see money in there for some strange reason. If it's not, y'all approve the budget, you can turn around and put money in there. But I just need to go back and get updated estimates based on the max number of courts that we, that we can fit on a tennis court. I know the minimum I can, but I'm not sure about 6 or whatever. But that'll all be part of the budget that I'll work on.
Greg, will you, after everything that's been said, do you still want to consider the league aspect?
I'm not going to. We're not going to initiate the league.
As it relates to the league, that would be something private individuals would do, and we can't give them legal advice or administrative guidance.
Okay, then you understand. All right, I think then
Sorry, okay.
Yes, sir.
I apologize. With respect to the leagues, are we going to take a position on whether, in the event that a league is formed, would we be open to discussion with that league on some type of a league reservation basis? We didn't really discuss that.
Greg?
That's up to the commission. My commitment is just like, if you want me to look at budgeting, the resurfacing and restriping to allow more pickleball courts, if there's enough of y'all that are interested in that, then you signal that to the people that are interested in pickleball. And as they kind of gather their thoughts together, I'll be happy to visit with them and see kind of how that's going. But just like Randy said, we didn't give recommendations on updating like the Little League's bylaws and how they operate. We're not involved in the senior softball league, but normally when agreements are going to be put on an agenda and come to the commission, that's when I get involved. So I'll be happy to, if they try to pursue that, once they have like a draft or whatever, I'll be happy to sit down with them and take a look at it.
Okay, so we all hear what the city manager and the commission has said tonight. So maybe it's now you will go back and, yes?
But what Ed was asking for, the commission as a whole has not said whether y'all would be in favor of entertaining the league concept. So you need to give individual input on whether y'all would support a league idea or not. Because it doesn't do any good if you're not going to support it later, for them to do all the work and then they submit it and say, no, we're not interested in the league. That's what Ed's asking.
Okay.
Well, yeah, I think the league idea is very good. And I think if you're going to put together a league and then put together your play schedule, what days and what times you want the courts available for your league to play, and then that's something the commission then could vote on.
Okay. Joe? Vice Mayor?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, be open to reviewing it. And like I said, we'll just kind of have to see once it's drafted, what that would look like.
Okay. Are you okay with that? Okay, so we are all engaged to entertain. You will go back and put together, if you so desire, and we'll move from there. How's that sound?
And I would just add and forgive me, the lawyer moment. What any private individuals do is their decision. The commission's expression of a willingness to entertain the idea is by no means a guarantee or an assurance that any proposal submitted would be accepted. If, for example, and I'm not suggesting anybody would be this unreasonable to say, we formed a league, we would like the courts from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. 4 days a week. I doubt that's something you're looking towards. Beyond the administrative element, from a legal standpoint, whether I'm your town attorney or somebody else, at whatever time that should come forward, you're going to be looking at issues of insurance, indemnity. It would have to be something professional, and I say that to say I know lawyers get in the way of things a lot, but there's this inclination at times that can't we just do this by a gentleman's agreement? And these sorts of things are the things that later lead to, especially when you're talking about a recreational activity, can lead to personal injury, can lead to those sorts of issues, and I would strongly encourage whoever your legal counsel is, whether it be me or somebody else down the road, as these things come up, to make sure the town is protected in those regards. And I'm not suggesting anybody would do otherwise, but I say that to say this is by no means a guarantee that if presented with an agreement, the city would entertain it and accept it. This is not sort of a reliance standpoint that we did all this work and now you have to take it. This is a willingness to see and speak once something concrete is to be considered.
Okay, thank you for coming tonight for the pickleballers, and I think we kind of are all on the same page as far as what we each have to do. And I thank you for coming, I thank you for the discussion tonight, and I hope that we can be of service and that we can work something out for all of us. I would like to see all of you happy because they're just such great courts, and I think it's great exercise, and it's just a really good thing for Indian Rocks Beach. So with that, we're going to move on to 7B, which is the discussion of ordinance 2020-08, which are the beach decals, the hang tags, and the 15th Avenue boat ramp. And Randy?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. On to item 7B, the discussion of the ordinance and amendments thereto. For roughly a week now on the city website, there's been posted a copy of the proposed changes along with an agenda memorandum that, as succinctly as I'm capable of, succinctly states them. I'll go through and hit the highlights for those present and for the benefit of the commission. There was a narrow change to the findings of fact, adding and just explicitly acknowledging the scarcity of the resource, in this case the parking at the beach accesses. And when we say parking at the beach accesses, I want to be clear, we're talking about parking at all of the beach accesses, not necessarily the beach access any one individual desires access to. Parking by permit decals generally. So the four issues that came, the four core issues that the commission addressed through its feedback and in response to citizen feedback. The first was the boat docks. There previously was a requirement in the ordinance that to load, or I can't think of the word right now, but launch. Thank you, launch a boat at the boat docks, that you needed a parking by permit decal. That requirement has been removed. You still have to be a resident or property owner, but the boat the vehicle that your decal is on need not be the same vehicle you launch your boat with. This is going to be more of a common sense enforcement. If somebody comes in with tags that say, Washington State, and they're wearing Washington State T-shirts and everything else, there might be a question as to, are you a property owner or resident? If so, at that stage, then if it is an issue enough, the code enforcement specialist may ask, just can you let me know which address you're affiliated with? So getting out of the need for a parking by permit decal for launching a boat. The second issue were hang tags. This were the temporary hang tags to allow for temporary parking on the beach accesses. To use Greg's terminology, the city has gotten out of the business of issuing hang tags. There is no hang tag system in this ordinance. Instead, anybody can park in the appropriate spot on a beach access, that is a property owner spot or a non-resident or property owner spot for up to 3 nights in a row. And so there is no need for the temporary parking decal. A single night, 2 night, or even 3 nights of parking in a spot will not require anything further, except the limitation is you cannot be in the same beach access more than 3 nights in a row. Not the same parking spot, so just moving over one spot within the same access won't do it. You'd have to find another beach access if that's really, if it's that important to be parked on the west side of Gulf Boulevard. So that's the second one. The third and fourth sort of overlap. and that is the parking by permit decals generally. What has been done in the previous ordinance, only a year-round resident or full-time resident, as that was defined based on the criteria necessary to establish such residency, could get a parking permit. There were some administrative interpretations that created some confusion, and so to address that confusion and ensure there is not a misunderstanding, the distinction now in this proposed ordinance, and again, this is a work session item. This is not first reading or second reading. This is an opportunity to say, is this the direction the commission desires to go? The first is for property owners who are year-long residents or year-round residents, or as some others have suggested it be referred to as homesteaded residents. The requirement is that you, with sufficient proof of your of the property tax showing, property tax roll record showing that you own the property appraiser's record showing that you own the property, you can get and that it's homesteaded, you can get as many decals as necessary for the vehicles that are directly registered to that location. And there's also with proof of the vehicle registration records. The alternative is if you are not, and in the situation where somebody is a lessee or is leasing, they need only produce either their lease showing a term in excess of 1 year or a certified letter from their landlord indicating they have an open term lease that expires in no less than 1 year. Alternatively, for the non-homesteaded property owners or taxpayers or whichever appellation you wish to give it, the people who are not in that class, you are entitled to a parking by permit decal, 1 per property owned. So the sole distinction is the number to which you have access, but now every taxpayer, property owner, again, whatever name people want to give it, have access. Speaking with the town management and town staff, or city management and city staff, before this change at present, there are presently under the ordinance that would be amended, there are in excess of, I want to say, 2,500 permits in circulation presently. Is that correct, Greg? No? What's the number?
We're up to about 1,100.
1,100. My apologies. I was thinking of another issue. There are 1,100 permits presently in circulation. We're talking about roughly 73 spots, or roughly 70 spots. With this, more people would have access to those spots. And so we are talking about a scarce resource in the town. Again, it may be that your desire is to park at a beach access, but if you live in the vicinity of, let's say, 8th, it may not be quite as convenient for you to go down to 24th to find a spot, though there may be a spot there. And so that we're not guaranteeing these decals in no way guarantee that a spot will be vacant for you, guarantee that the spot will be vacant at the same time, only that if it is, you have access. And that's the only thing these decals do. But with the feedback of the community and your commission responsive to the concerns of the community, that is how each of those were addressed. The one thing I would add on the property owner side, or non-homesteaded property, in the event the property is held by a corporation, it allows that if the applicant can show that they are an officer or registered agent as registered with the Department of State, that they are of that corporation, then they can get it. To be very, very clear, it may be that more than one person for a single property as a property owner has the capacity to get a decal, meaning let's say your parents invested in a property here some years ago and it has now been bequeathed to 4 siblings. All 4 siblings could potentially apply, but only one of them is going to get it. Or only one vehicle between the 4 of them is going to get it, and they could each use that vehicle, but that would be how that would operate. And so that is how, those are the substantive revisions to the ordinance. Again, these are proposed amendments for the commission to consider, prepared by myself and town manager based on the feedback received today.
Thank you, Randy. Greg, do you want to say anything, or do you want to?
I'm good.
Okay. And
Yes, you.
before we go to the commission, I think if it would be okay with everyone, I'd like to go out to public comment.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go out to public comment. Is there anyone who would like to speak on this discussion item at this time? Please come forward, say your name and your address.
My name is Paul Phillips. I live at 2408 Beach Trail. I'm a non-resident owner. I've lived on Beach Trail various times of the year since 1985, and I've had decals for my wife and I for over 30 years. And at times, because I was at the last meeting, by the way, when we talked about these hanging tags for 3 days, and if you can recall, I thought it was very hard to administrate that. And before I go further, let me ask Mr. Moore a question. You said you can park on the beach access for 3 days. Is that with a tag or without a tag?
No, tags don't exist anymore.
No tag.
No, the parking by permit decal might change which spot you're in within the access. If you have a resident decal or property owner decal, you can park in those spots, but there will not be hang tags anymore.
So how are the police? So a lot of this problem is one of enforcement, in my opinion. And I know finally in the last few months there's been more enforcement because I live right off 25th Beach Street access, the street parking, and usually the people parking in the resident parking spots half the time are not residents. They don't have decals. And I know it's very hard to enforce this around the clock, but in my opinion, a lot of this problem of parking for beach residents has been one of enforcement. And if this is enforced, some of this problem, I think, will probably go away. That's my own belief. And I've lived there for over 30 years, and I've watched this transpire. But getting back to my comment, Mr. Moore, you said you can park in one of those spots for 3 days without a tag. How are the police going to know? I mean, they're going to have to go and make a mark on your tire or something?
Yeah.
Let's address all this at the end.
Yeah, at the very end, Mr. Phillips, we're writing down what you said, so at the end we'll address all of the
Okay,
comments.
all right, fine.
Thank you. Do you have anything else?
Yeah, and so I just want to know, and again, you're a lawyer, and I saw the proposals have come on your stationery, so I assume you looked at this for fairness and equality and potential legal questions. But I'm just questioning myself to you. Is this truly legal to discriminate between a property owner and someone renting and giving more credence, more weight, and more privileges to a renter than an owner paying tax?
Okay.
And I just asked you that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Phillips.
Madam Mayor, Commissioners,
Yes.
Trent Wolfersberger, property owner at 215th Avenue.
Yes.
I would just like to thank the commission for hearing the comments of property owners and residents and putting this to the working group and coming up with potential solutions, fixing the boat ramp issue and, one parking decal or resident permit, whatever we want to call it. Thank you. I think that answers my problems. And I know it answers many others, but the boat ramp was a big issue for me. So I'm glad that's been discussed and put to the work group. Thank you.
Thank you, Trent. Is there anyone else who'd like to come up at this time? Please come forward. Hi, Rebecca.
Hello. Rebecca Sager, 368 La Hacienda Drive. I just want to thank the commission for working so hard on this. And I just want to tell you a little bit about our personal experience because we've lived here for 10 years and have had a terrible time up to this point trying to get to be on the beach and get a parking space. And we had family in recently, and ever since you limited the number of resident parking decals, we were actually able to get a parking space. There was only one, but we did appreciate that, and that's been wonderful. So I think the fact that you're limiting them to full-time residents, people who've got cars here, for just those 70 spaces. I mean, I know we're not talking about all the spaces, just the 73 spaces that are on the beach accesses has been a very large improvement on our ability to get to the beach. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Rebecca. Anyone else who'd like to come forward, please come at this time.
Mark Bodine, Cameron Cove Resort, 2402 Gulf Boulevard. I'd like to thank the commission and the city manager. Over the past couple of months, you've listened to a lot of the homeowners from Indian Rocks Beach discussing the beach parking. You put it on the agenda for some changes, and I compliment you on that. The reason I'm here again is for the hang tags. Cameron Cove Resort is a different animal at Indian Rocks Beach. It's a timeshare resort. We have over 2,000 owners that are weekly owners at Cameron Cove. I am not in favor of completely getting rid of the hang tags. We got hang tags from the city that we would hand out to some of our residents that needed an additional parking space. We would take that car information, vehicle, make, model, color, license plate number when we issued the tag. We would know who had that tag and who was parked in the beach access, usually on 24th Avenue. By eliminating the tag, anybody can park there, and I'm sure the sheriff will have a difficult time trying to understand whose car that is. We know exactly if they're in our resort, who they are and where they are and what car they have. Recently, the city is charged for $5 a night with a 3-night minimum on, or maximum on parking. I have no issue with the charge for the fee. Our problem is our residents are deeded owners in the city of Indian Rocks Beach, and they have weekly ownership. They check in Saturday and they check out the following Saturday. So a 3-night stay would not really benefit us. However, if you're eliminating the parking tags, they could stay in one beach access 3 nights and then move their car over to another beach access. Again, their vehicle would not be identified, and that would kind of defeat the whole purpose. To give you an example, we had an elderly lady who contacted the resort about an additional parking spot recently. So I told her, I said, well, you need to contact the city and get the permit from them. It's $5 a night, and then there's a convenience fee for issuing a permit. She did that. She did everything. She checked in on Saturday. She left her permit at home. She said, well, what can I do? I said, well, City Hall is closed on the weekends. Unfortunately, you'll have to go down Monday and see if they can reissue you a permit. She couldn't do that because her friends and family was coming in Saturday and Sunday. So the issue was, at least we were able to get the permit ahead of time, which is great, but I am not in favor of eliminating the hang tags. And again, thank you very much for your cooperation and your consideration in reference to the beach access parking. It's a difficult situation that you're going through. You can't please everybody, and I support the decisions that you make.
Thank you, Mark. Is there anyone else at this time who'd like to come forward concerning the parking? Hearing none, I will close the, Zoom. Matt, is there anyone on Zoom?
Joe Zagarino, you are recognized. Please unmute your microphone.
Hi, Joe.
Hello, how you doing? Thank you very much for allowing me to speak at your meeting. I've been a resident, everybody dances around this word, resident, owner, resident, homeowner, whatever you guys want to call us. I've only owned my place for 6 years now in Indian Rocks Beach, which is, let me clarify that. Windrush Boulevard. And I feel like I'm discriminated against a lot of people who are just owners. I rent my place out for 3 months out of the year. The people don't get a tag. I was told by the City Hall that the reason why you guys changed this was because of the uses of the tags being switched from car to car. If that's the biggest issue that you have, then get those people in violators and charge them for it. Remove their tag. Take care of that. Don't hurt the people who pay the taxes, who do everything by the books, like myself and a lot of others. I think that you are discriminating against a lot of the people who are owners. And I've seen tonight, Randy, I think his name was, a gentleman, even everybody on the commission, did dance around that word, owner, resident. To me, you're discriminating, and that's to me disappointing. I am a taxpayer, and I read your rules, and the applicant for parking, it clearly states, property owners, not property residents, not property part-time residents, not homeowners full-time. It says owners. I hope you listen to me. I hope you listen to everybody out there. I understand some people are a little disappointed because they're not getting a parking space. I get it. I understand that. I feel bad when you're discriminated against and your full-time residents want to listen for almost 2 hours about pickleball. I get it, not a problem. I think that everything should be addressed and addressed to the fullest, not to the point where it only helps out the full-time residents. I'm just a little disappointed with it. I hope that you listen. I sent you all a letter just explaining why I was upset. I hope that, I think you said that you're changing your ways of doing it, and that I will be able to get a sticker. I have one card down there. I use it 5 times a year for a week each time. I will be a full-time resident shortly. This year I'm retiring, so I know that won't be an issue then, but still, it bothered me this last season. I was just there 2 weeks ago for a month, and I got kicked out of the beach. I couldn't use my spot. Very disappointed. I hope you listen. I really thank you very much for letting me talk at your meeting, and I will be at your meetings when I come down there to spend the full time. Thank you very much. I do appreciate it.
Thank you, Joe. Is there anyone else on Zoom?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to recognize Carla at this time. Please unmute your microphone.
Thank you, Commissioners. This is Carla Stahl. I'm an owner of 1000 Gulf Boulevard, Unit 404. I did send an email to the Commission and to the City Manager at the time that this was first enacted, expressing my displeasure. My attorney has been in contact with the City Attorney, and I'm satisfied with property owners being given one decal. My concern, however, is, or maybe I'm unclear on this, I do need beach parking even though I live or have a beachfront residence, which will be my full-time residence within the next 2 years. However, sometimes the facilities at the beach access are better suited to some equipment that we use at the beach, and specifically an IT water bike. We don't really have a way on our property for me to transport that to the water very easily, so I would be using my car to take it to the waterfront using a beach access. And I'm also interested in being able to park on side streets when we have overflow guests at our place. And I'm not clear on the decals. Currently, I have 3 decals. They actually expired at the end of last year for every car that we have registered in our name. At the time that I am a permanent resident there, I know that I will be able to get a decal for all of those cars, which seems a little excessive. If some people have 3 cars, that's really not the city's fault or other property owners who may not be full-time residents. I am satisfied with 1 decal, but I may not, and for my parking at the beach access, considering this special equipment, I will only be able to use 1 car there because it's the only car that transports this specific equipment. However, at any given time, I may park any one of my vehicles on a side street in order to ensure that my guests at the Reef Club have access to parking there. Our parking there is very limited, and one unintended consequence, I'm sure it was unintended, but one consequence of this parking situation and the fact that we're now ticketing people on the side streets, et cetera, at a higher rate is that more and more people are coming and trespassing on our property, which we are attempting to remedy, but it is costing our association money in order to secure our property when this was not as big a problem in the past. I certainly recognize the trouble that the city has managing the rights of all its residents and having all of its residents be satisfied. We do have a number of short-term Airbnbs on the side streets, which we all know has been possibly good for the economy of the local businesses, but not necessarily good for our parking situations anywhere. So I just wanted to say thank you for reconsidering this, or at least giving the actual property owners at least some solution, because to exclude us from these decals I felt was very unfair, if not possibly unconstitutional, and I do appreciate your time. I also appreciate that it's a Tuesday evening and I'm sitting at home and you guys are all there. I know it's your highly paid position in government, however, I appreciate your efforts, and I do hope that you will listen to people like myself and the last gentleman who spoke, and I do hope that this will get resolved. My husband works quite a lot in the legal field, and his position is if everybody is a little unhappy, it was probably a successful resolution to the case.
Thank you,
So-
Carla. You're over your 3 minutes, but I do appreciate everything that you said tonight. And is there anyone else on Zoom who'd like to speak?
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay, with that, we will close the public hearing. And Greg, I'm looking for you to kind of answer some of those questions.
The answer is yes, no, yes. Yeah. Well, let me just clarify, because I think maybe still some questions about this. Randy stepped out. Basically, what this draft would do, if you want to go forward with it, it would allow property owners, and that's one of the complaints we have with the existing ordinance, they would be allowed to receive one decal per parcel. We would be out of the hang tag business. You'd be allowed to park at beach access for no more than three days. And then property owners and full-time residents could use the boat ramp. And that's all manageable. The boat ramp's easy. If a deputy rolls up on an individual, and we pick on a state, what's your state? Ohio, I'll pick on Joe's state. If there's an Ohio truck there, all we have to do is ask for the name and pull up the information. They're either a property owner or they're not, or they're a full-time resident. We can figure that out. I don't really want to go into too much how we will address people that park too long at beach accesses, but that's could be done. Trust me, there are people that live adjacent to beach accesses that tell us frequently when somebody's been there too long. So I don't have any concerns about that. So back to what Randy was saying, I think the 3 changes address 99.9% of the comments or complaints that you have.
Okay, Randy, do you want to follow up with anything at all before I go to the commission?
I'm thinking, Madam Mayor, just thinking through the comments that were made. I want to be very clear. It seemed that at least one of the speakers was unclear about what's being proposed. As a property owner in Indian Rocks Beach, each property owner will be entitled to a parking decal for each parcel owned. So there is no longer a distinction about the entitlement, only the number to which you will be given, number of decals to which you will have access to. I think that was the only misunderstanding that needed direct addressing, and from an enforcement standpoint, without going into the minutia that, again, the manager, Mims, and I have discussed at some length how that could be administered from a practical standpoint and pragmatically as it relates, to not being overzealous in that regard. I didn't fully understand the question about watercraft and the side street parking. The decals have nothing to do with parking on the city streets. There are separate ordinances, which we've discussed at similar length, that govern them.
Well, and we do, if it's a street that allows, and I will get to you, because I remember you said too, I have to. If it's a street that allows parking, then yes, they can park there, but if it is a side street that doesn't allow parking, then obviously a citizen, whether they are
Any vehicle.
no one can, yeah.
Any
I mean,
vehicle. There's no distinction
Right.
at all.
What
I'm not a
about-
resident of this community. I can park on the street as long as there's not a sign posted directing on it.
Correct. And what about the discriminatory situation?
Without getting into that, the constitutional analysis of it would get down to, has the city articulated a rational basis for its reasoning? I think the volume of discussion around this issue has established rational bases, and I'm not going to sit at a meeting and say these are the 5 or 6 things to the exclusion of other arguments that could or would be raised were this legally challenged. I will tell you that with the passage of any ordinance comes the possibility of litigation. I can't assure you that nobody in this audience or otherwise would attempt to make such claim. I would say that you have a colorable defense, and we would defend it as such. The one point I would make, and I had a similar discussion with another property owner in the community and resident who frequents the area about precisely that issue. And the reality is, as policymakers, anytime you draw the line somewhere, any bright line leaves someone aggrieved. We need look no further than the pandemic. I don't know that there's a really meaningful difference from a 66-year-old ultramarathon runner and a 64-year-old with emphysema on why anybody 65 and over is going to get the shot at a time certain and no one else is. There are times where that line doesn't always make sense, but there is in an isolated example, but you take the data you have, you make what you believe to be a rational decision, and you try your best to please as many people as possible based on consensus and feedback. Regardless of what validity any legal challenge would or would not have, I do not think it could be said that this approach has been hasty, that this approach has been without the regard to the concerns of your community, regardless of whether they're voting members of the community or not. I do this for a living. I've seen communities where people say, I know the 7 people who voted for me and that's what I'm doing and that's the end of this. That's not this community, and that was why I spoke earlier to say it truly is a pleasure to work here and see the democratic process work as a microcosm of how a lot of other things should work. So with that said, I have nothing further to add, Madam Mayor.
Okay, I'm going to go to the commission now. Do the commissioners have any other comments to make? Denise?
No, I don't.
Well, the only thing I will say is I think it's a good compromise. It probably is a fairer compromise and the way to go. I would like to say that I don't think it's the city's responsibility to provide additional parking to people who either own condos or have rental properties for the advent of their business. We're not in your business, and if you rent your property out, we only have so many parking spots. The biggest thing we have is people coming from everywhere here, and the spots are limited, so this is the best we could do, and I think it's a fair opportunity with this iteration. So.
Ed, do you want to make any comments?
Thank you, yes. Boy, last week the traffic was terrible on Saturday right before that rainstorm. It was almost an hour to get from 24th Avenue to 5th Avenue. So yeah, the traffic is bad, parking is bad, it's only going to get worse, we know that. We have to apportion the scarce resource. I think this is an adequate attempt to do that. I wish we would be able to have a clause that does not grant a sticker to a short-term rental business, because I don't think that they're residents, and I think that that's apportioning something to the value of their business, which we're not required to do. And then finally, my comment is that in driver's education, you learn that driving is a privilege, not a right. It's a privilege granted by the state. And parking by extension is a privilege as well. So all the nonsense about rights and discrimination, I don't believe that that's a valid point. It's nice to threaten, but I feel very confident that the legislation is not in any way going to be challenged successfully in a legal situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Vice Mayor McCall, do you have any comments?
No, I just wanted to thank Rainey and Greg. I think, as Phil said, it's a great compromise. We heard, obviously, from the boat owners that's been addressed, some of the issues with caregivers and family and things of that nature for our condo owners on the west side of Gulf. It seems to address that. And again, as our property owners, like I said, it allows them, if they have, we heard about medical conditions, other things from our second homeowners. And obviously this will give them an opportunity to be able to get one of the 73?
Somewhere around
there. Yeah, somewhere in the 70 number parking spaces that they'll have access to. So I do believe this is a fair compromise as far as going forward.
Thank you. 5 years ago, we didn't have this issue. like we do today. And I do think this is a great compromise, and I'm glad we are revisiting before we actually, when would the ordinance come before us?
We would have it on, the first reading would be May,
Okay?
and the second reading would be the June meeting.
Okay.
And I will just, let me say this to go back, but we will, staff and deputies that are assigned to IRB will use judgment during the interim to not aggressively cite. So for example, if you're a property owner and you have one of the blue decals, there's no sense in me citing somebody tomorrow if the commission is going to go forward with this. So we'll be using some judgment during the interim to get through the next couple of months.
Okay, then, with that, I think everyone knows what direction that we're going. Randy?
I think we have consensus direction on that.
Okay. I'm going to close this discussion item, and with that, is there any other business to come before this board tonight?
One thing I just want to remind you, because it's a lot of effort goes into this. We do have the lights on across the street, so either ride by or want to walk over there. But we have world-class lighting now. Musco Lighting, which provides lighting for pro and college sports. I encourage you to take a look at it before you leave.
All right, definitely. With that, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you for coming tonight. And Mr. Phillips, thank you for staying the whole meeting.
Now,
It was
what's
very
the
nice.
first? Now, who's the last motion on